Welcome to the Resilience Project podcast with your host, leading the men's movement, Abdul Rabarbi.
Welcome back again to the Resilience Project podcast, where we dive into the untold stories of struggling men who have faced life's toughest challenges, adversities. Today, I'm your host, Abdul, and we have someone here today with us, Paul, from South Australia, who has faced life's toughest adversities, attempting to navigate the breakdowns of his relationships and finding himself in an incredible, vulnerable situation, living in his caravan. But today, Paul is going to basically share his story with us moving forward. Now, I'm going to bring Paul into the call. Paul, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for your courage and willingness, Paul, to share your journey with us. Together, we're making sure that these unheard voices reach the world. The unheard voices are finally beginning to be heard. Thank you very much, Paul, for tuning in.
You're welcome, Abdul. No worries. Great to be a part of your journey.
No, thank you very much. It can't be possible without you, all of you amazing dads out there, amazing men who are actually have the courage, to make these courage steps, to finally, have your voices heard. Paul, look, before we begin, we'll just start deep, diving into this slowly. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and what it is that you do?
All right, so obviously Paul from South Australia. I lived here for the last 31 years, worked all my life here, still working. A couple of years ago, I all of a sudden had a seizure, ended up having a divorce thrown on me a month later after, having my first seizure. Suspended license, got my license back, had a second seizure. Now I'm, diagnosed with epilepsy. I went through the whole caravan for a year. Got, unfortunately, lost the house that I was almost close to owning, and she's got it. She's got our kids, the dogs, got everything, the happy life. And I went through the whole caravan, RV, brought an RV because I couldn't buy again. Just struggled, and after 2 years, I've got a rental, but it's still a struggle.
Yeah,
it's not, but it's
it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. Paul, and you being here, that it's a lot of courage. I understand, how you must feel at the moment. Even just making this first step to voice your struggles with the world on the Resilience Project. Paul, can you take us back to the beginning? Basically, what was life like before everything going downhill? Before losing your house, before losing your marriage? Is that right? Were you were married, or was she your partner at the time?
We were married for almost 10 years. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Married for 10 years. So how was life like before everything went downhill for you, Paul?
We were married for almost 10 years. That year that she decided to divorce me, with no attempt even at all to try and save my marriage. I tried, and I never thought that was ever going to happen. I thought, I'd had the relationships before, and spent multiple years in relationships, 10 years in one, more years in others, and pretty much almost the same thing, but they were just girlfriends at the time. So it was pretty much, got everything taken away, start again, yada yada yada. Finally found someone that I thought was going to be my life partner, and we knew each other from high school back in '92, and yeah, so and she gave me my first child, and we bought a house, and I was going to have that. We were going to have that paid off in 10 years' time, and yeah, I thought everything was great. I didn't think, I worked a lot, just always worked, always supported. I helped raise her two sons from the age of they were 5 and 8 up to they're 20 and 23 now. So 15 years. Like they were my own. Obviously grateful I had my own son. And just yeah, I used to work a lot. Doing what I did and just work, trying to support the family. And yeah, and then obviously, when I get home, I'd like to go out in my shed because I had a shed full of just all my collectibles, all my stuff that I collected over the years, and I like pretty much my zen little room. Just after work, after a big day, have a drink and that, and yeah, and just I suppose, never really had a life, just did work and all that sort of stuff. And I don't know, I suppose the fact of me just drinking, which I never drank to get drunk. When I did get tipsy or something like that, I was never ever violent. I was never ever abusive. The one thing I was a bigger kid. I
Mm,
was messing around with the kid. I was play fighting, just wrestling, being a big kid, and that's me. I'm just,
mm.
you know, so I was never violent, never abusive and all that, and never cheated. Cooked clean, I get up in the morning on the weekends, and I have baskets of washing that she'd left, folded and all sorts of stuff in the laundry, and I'd get them out and start folding them into piles, and sorting them out to kids, and she'd come out and and I'd cook, I'd clean, I'd work, and I'd do all sorts of stuff, and we went away camping and all sorts of stuff. So but yeah, to have the epilepsy in 23 in March, that first seizure, which
Mm,
was completely unexpected, and then
What and did
a
that
month later.
happen? Did that happen prior to your marriage breakdown, or was that during or after?
No, because it was only about a month later that she decided to say that she wanted a divorce,
Okay,
and
okay, and
and
and obviously,
so I'd lost
obviously
my license
you,
for 6 months.
yep, yeah.
So like
I was going to ask, is that Paul? Obviously you worked for years paying off your house. Were you the only income, the income provider to the household, or
I
were you
I
both
was the
doing?
majority. Yeah, to start off with, obviously she didn't have a job. She would look after the kids and all sorts of stuff, and then she wanted to get back into
Mm,
work, which she did.
mm,
But she always went on about how she only earned, very little compared to what I did. So I
mm.
was the main breadwinner, and just doing that. And
Yes.
like I said, first house I never bought, and I would have had it paid off in 10 years' time. And yeah, that was an absolute dream. So, and now she's obviously still living in the house. Got a new boyfriend, and got the dogs. Everything that I worked hard for, and yeah, just kicking the teeth.
So basically, you've lost
Pretty
everything. I mean, even for the house that you also worked for, contributed probably a major or the majority portion of at least. You've got nothing from
much.
that. It's all gone now.
Yeah, and I was lucky enough to walk away with. I know people say that material stuff is just material stuff. Like
Mm,
family and all sorts of stuff. Well, my platonic family, I don't have really any support there. My family that I thought, a wife and three boys, I thought that was, my life. And yeah, it's just, I'm still, I still find it hard to, even go around there and pick up my son, and go, this is a house that, we lived there for 13 years almost, so yeah. and yeah, just to go like that and walk away. And then I got threats with, because I had a collection of all my antiques and my collectible cars and lots of stuff, and she threw that back at me, about assets, and pretty much, that I'd pretty much lose it all, if we went down the path of a lawyer and everything, and the whole, and then obviously my super, and just everything. She just attacked me from everywhere, and I think she had a lot of help from outside, which she denies. But yeah, I'm not stupid, but I can't say nothing because it just it doesn't matter what you say, and I still try and bite my tongue, and I'm still, my tongue still gets loose, still, and it's it just doesn't get me nowhere. It's unfortunately, it doesn't matter what I say, what I can, anything I can prove or whatever. It just doesn't matter. Like, they just used everything against you, and yeah, they've got you pretty much by the balls. You know, you verbally abuse them or anything like that. You even, not that I'd ever hit her, but you even attempt that. Yeah, you're done. So yeah,
So,
yeah.
so now, pretty much you've lost everything. Like there's nothing that you own, nothing to your name at all. That everything that you've worked for.
Yeah. Well, other than walking out with a small little payout, the RV that I've got, which looks like I'm going to be taking a little bit of a loss on because I need to get money to back me up. And just the things that I've worked for now, and over the years, and my prized possessions. Like I said, people say material stuff means nothing, but well, this is my stuff, my collectibles and all sorts of stuff I've been collecting for years, and it makes me happy. I haven't had a lot of happiness in like family and relationships and all that sort of stuff, and then that was sort of almost the real big blow, to lose
Understandable.
something that I thought was solid.
Understandable. I mean, you've worked for all your life. It's so you have very little to live with. In other words, and
I wanted to have a family and a son, a child. I got the child, I got a house, I got the wife and all that, and that's it. I thought that was it, you know.
it,
I yeah, wow,
it's usually
and
like
then
that.
yeah, I'm hearing a lot of stories of other friends, people that just seems to be a lot more happening lately, and just I don't know. I don't know what's going on in the world. I don't know why. Without sounding um male chauvinist pig, they have a lot of power, and we've lost every we can't even say anything back, really. We can't even like sort of yell at them. We can't even do nothing. But we, on the other hand, we bust our asses and we do the right thing, and it doesn't matter. It's not like some reason for some time at some stage they always seem, the majority, not all of them, but seem to find a way of just going, no, I want a new life. And well, as I said to my mate the other day, there's women out there that go, oh yeah, I build this car, I'm building this car, I'm building a drag car. Oh, yeah, she's all happy. Then years come down the track, then he's built up all these years of spending money and building his hobby and all sorts of stuff, and then what happens? She divorces him. He loses all his car collection, he loses all this. He gets to see his kids once in a blue moon. And it's just, and that's the struggle. The kid, the son, the daughter, that, I used to read to my son every morning, and every night, before bed. I used to, play Xbox with him. We used to do basketball. We used to do so much stuff. It was so good, and I've lost so much of that contact. So much, Lloyd, to the point where, it's like I've done something wrong, but he says I haven't. But I just feel that there's so much distance between us compared to there used to be. We used to be close. We used to do so much, and it's a struggle now to, you know. I know he's 13, but he's my only son, and
Of course.
pretty much, the only one close to me at the moment. But yeah. So
Of course. It must be hard for you, Paul. Must be very, very difficult.
yeah,
The emotions
yeah,
and everything. And you were, I mean, from our previous discussion, I mean, you've told me that you've always been a great husband towards your spouse, or always very helpful. You've never laid out your hands on her or anything like that. Just so that the audience do have the context and the appropriate precision.
yeah.
You
I
were
mean,
never.
right at the last moment, towards the end of the breakup, there was a moment where, I yelled at her. I yelled at her,
Mm,
and she's like,
mm,
I've never heard you yell at her before. And it was just one, moment that she's like, oh, wow. It's just like, because,
mm,
I was never like that. Even to the point is where, she'd be yelling at a certain level. We're in the
mm,
lounge room, our son's up in the room, and I said, look, can you lower your voice to my level? Like, can we just talk at my level and not yell? So Luke says, oh, he's got his headphones on. I said, it doesn't matter. Can we just talk calmly and civilly? Like, can we just not yell? And that was my level. Just trying to do that. But then sometimes it just, you know, it wouldn't go like that. And yeah, and even to the point where she even turned around and said in front of our son and yelled it out that, like that, I'm a drug addict and an alcoholic. All right. I will admit that I like my beer and I like my double jacks. I work, I like to come home and have a drink. I'm not interested in getting drunk. That's not me. I've got other friends and that around me that love to get drunk, and I'm not interested. I just like to have a nice drink, not to get
mm,
drunk. You know,
mm,
New Year's Eve or something like that, I might have a few extra drinks and lots of stuff. As far as a drug addict, all right, okay, I will happily admit, I do the marijuana, and that is it. That is point blank. That is as far as it's ever gone. And to call me a drug addict,
mm,
and an alcoholic, which to me, an alcoholic gets up in the morning and drinks. I wait until I get home. A couple of times I've had a drink, a beer after work on the way home with the boys. And but yeah, it's just, you know, to like a drug addict, there's a whole spectrum. I just did my marijuana and that's it. And yeah, I mean, I worked. I cooked, I cleaned. I wasn't a bum. I didn't just sit around and do nothing. You
mm,
know.
mm, mm.
So
And
you know,
and
and,
you were never
and to be
violent.
honest with everyone, to be honest. That's me being honest. That's what I do. And yes, that's been not the drinking, but the smoking has been a big part of my life, but it's something that just sometimes helps me relax, sometimes helps me with my appetite, because I'm like 49 years old. People can't see, but I'm only like 50 kilos. I struggle with my weight. I've always had a high metabolism. I bike ride. I've done basketball training for my kid, school. I'm very energetic, work. I burn more than I can put in, you know,
Mm, mm,
and and that's another thing with the ex. She looked at me and just goes, "Oh, you can eat whatever you want, you can do whatever you want, you don't put on the weight." Well, that's just me. I can't help who I am, and obviously my genetics. We're all
mm,
different, but I
mm,
got looked down on that. You know,
mm, mm.
so
Absolutely, absolutely,
I don't.
absolutely. Yeah, totally understand. I totally understand. You were never a drug addict. You might had a few drinks here and there, but never got drunk. You were never violent towards her. And yeah, so fast forward now, Paul, is that basically when you found yourself living in a caravan, what emotions were you going through? What was going through your head, your mind, and how did you navigate through those very, very tough initial days?
Uh, yeah, well, that's a hard one. It's easy, but it's a hard one to handle.
Yeah, it must be hard.
Uh,
Must be very, very difficult. You were inside living in your own home, and then you find yourself outside
yeah. So
living in the
she wanted me
caravan. And
to.
yeah.
She wanted me to get a like a transportable for out the back of the house,
Mm,
and so we looked into that, and then it was just taking a bit longer, because we were trying to get all the approvals to suss out the prices and all the stuff, and then it just and then I just turned around and said, look, instead of doing this, I'm just going to get a caravan, and
mm,
I can put it up front, that way, it's easily gone, and I don't think she liked it because I think that meant that wasn't going to be more asset for her. If I had a granny flat at the back, as far as me having something that I could just take away and have a home still. Um, but yeah, I lived out in the front yard so I could see my son every day, and then my mate down the road in the same street offered me to put it up in front of his yard. So I was there for a little while, and so yeah, I think the caravan was close to a year, and then I ended up deciding, because I was trying to rent and buy, and it was just impossible. Um, and yeah, so I decided to buy an RV and live in that for a while and try and sort something out. And that ended up being 6 months, which was at times pretty hard because some of the caravan parks were pretty rough, and there's there was a lot of abusive and a lot of stealing going on, and there's just it wasn't a good place in a couple of them. So after the first month, I sort of started regretting my decision on
mm.
buying an RV, um, and yeah, so just kept on trying and trying, going for inspections and just trying to get a rental and just knockback after knockback after knockback, and then finally, yeah, got onto one that was luckily through a friend, and still had to go through the process, and yeah, eventually got it. So, which is good, but yeah, just trying to sell my RV now and to make some money and help, fund some, bills, and
Mm.
fix my car, just stuff, and just yeah, get on with life again.
Starting from rock bottom, from scratch, as they say. You're starting all the way from the beginning, barely having anything, and just now starting all over again. But rather from the age of 20 or 18 years of age, you're beginning from the start a new chapter in life from the age of 49 after losing everything, or pretty much, yeah, almost everything. The only thing what you've got, what you're holding on to, is the RV in your car. That's pretty much all you have to yourself.
Yep, yep,
And you
that's
build
it.
it,
So yeah,
and yeah, and you want to share with us a little bit more about your son. I mean, how often do you see your son? Is it as often as you'd like it to be? Tell us a little bit more about that.
it's not as often as I'd like to be because obviously I'm supposed to have him every 2 weeks, but he does want to stay overnight, even though I've set him up a room. I've got a 3-bedroom house.
Mm,
Um, doesn't want to stay overnight. He reckons he doesn't want to stay over even at friend's place, and it's just like I've tried to talk to him about, that I'm his dad, that we can stay up late, we can play Xbox, and we can get up and bike ride early in the morning, make him breakfast and all that. But yeah, since I've had the place, he's only stayed once, and that was Christmas night. So it makes it hard, you know.
mm,
Um, I just, and then when I do get to pick him up, and he wants to go home. I'm only pretty much spending 5 hours each day almost, or a little bit more, with him, and then so yeah, that's pretty hard because he's my only son, and yeah, so getting home to after work to an empty home, and yeah, it's a struggle, living in the caravan was really hard. Um, you know, there's times where, I understand how it gets so hard,
Mm.
how you can really be pushed to the
Of
brink.
course. Of course.
Um, yeah.
Must be very
Um,
difficult. Must be very, very, very difficult times for you, Paul.
yeah, well, even after this time, it's still hard to talk.
Mm.
Yeah.
I understand. I understand. The hardest truth is probably often happens when we least expect it. I remember when I went through my marriage breakdown, that was the hardest moment. The truth that I had to accept, I just had to accept it for what it was. If I might ask you, Paul, um,
Yeah.
what were some of the hardest truths for you, or one most difficult truth for you that you had to face about the entire situation during that time?
Uh,
Something that you
the
didn't want
fact
to
of not
accept.
having to,
Sorry.
not that I just, I suppose, not seeing my son every day and having the relationship that we used to have.
Mm,
That hurts. She's got, she's got three sons that are living with her, and her boyfriend plus the dogs. So she's got so much around her, and yeah, just not having that every day. Get home to my son, do whatever is really hard, and yeah, I struggle the fact is that I was so close. I'm back to renting, where I started, and now I'm back there again after just being so close to owning a house, which was a dream. Um, you know, um, and yeah, just having my first marriage fail. So
un-
there's
understand.
a few things.
Must be very tough, Paul. Must be very, very tough. I've walked in your shoes in many ways, of course. Did you feel like during the time, Paul, that you could basically reach out for help?
Um, there was talk about it. Like, I don't know. I've never been one to sort of really be, I don't know, sort of comfortable with doing that. I
Mm,
suppose just sort of old. Um, just yeah, you know.
tot-
Um,
totally.
I suppose this is the really first big, like these last 2 years have been, the most tryingest time of my whole life. So
Totally
it's just been
understand.
really these last, yeah.
I want to go back to something that you mentioned earlier. But correct me if I am wrong. Somewhere along of the lines you mentioned that I really want to dig into deep now before we actually end this podcast is that women have the power to, I mean, in such, not all women would be abusing this, of course, but there are some out there they are being given the power, they can do and say what they want. And you abuse the law to use it to their advantage. The reason to why, I guess, you've been put into such a situation. Um, you want to tell us a little bit more about that? Is there anything that you want to share about that? Do you think the government is doing enough for struggling men out there? Do you think the law is fair? The reason why I ask
I
this
mean,
question,
yeah.
the reason why I ask this
Um,
question is because many struggling men find themselves in a disadvantaged situation that they feel they've been left out. The law is not fair. And there is no such thing of equality. Like in your case, for an instance, you worked so friggin' hard for how many years, and then you walk out and you don't even have nothing to your name apart than the caravan and the vehicle, but the house that you've worked for and the rightful
yeah,
I guess we could say the rightful responsibility that you have, with your child to be able, in other words, to see your child spend quality time, as we have spoken previously. You don't have access to that.
yeah. Um, yeah. I I just as far as I don't understand why, it seems like, every time that they get the child, they get to, they get this and all sorts of stuff. There's no, there's a lot of talk about, women getting abused, assaulted and all sorts of stuff. And that's not a good thing, and I don't condone that and all sorts of stuff. But, you know, um, I wonder how much percentage of all that is from guys, being pushed, going through, like, for instance, maybe me just work, 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 support, 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 doing all that, and then all of a sudden have their whole life turned upside down, not be able to see their kids, and they just, and it is so easy just to snap and lose it, and whether it's at yourself or at the your ex or her, just, I don't know, just, and it's just like we've lost almost every sort of bit of power. I don't know, it's just we don't have a say anymore, almost. you know if I was to go to the police station and say, oh, she assaulted me, I'd probably get laughed at. But if she went to the police station and said he assaulted me, bang, you know. I don't know. It's just how it feels, and it's just, um, you know, even just little things like, just, I don't understand it. They you see a lot of them out these days, and we travel around with work and that, traveling the streets, and you see nothing but them. All the female. There's so many females out there just walking around, walking around, walking around. It was like, where's the male? Well, he's obviously out working. But there's so many females out there. Out there with their girlfriends. With their babies, having coffees. Because later on in life, if they're not happy, then all they have to do is say, I'm not happy. I want a divorce. Bang, I'm taking half your house. I can take half your super. I'm going to get child support. And pretty much you got nothing you can fucking say. So, yeah, and like, yeah, and it's just, I don't understand it.
Do you think there should be some
It's just,
changes? Do you think that the government should, or the law should be changed in a way is that where it accommodates some rights or something for
well,
men like yourself? I mean, like, this has been going on for too long
they
because
go
we've
on
been
about
hearing.
men's health. They try to promote this, these, men's health, little stalls here and there, men's health, and all that sort of stuff, and I think that, to me, I think that's just a like, because of the whole situation, the whole way the roles of reverse have changed and everything like that. We can't just let them, do this and all that, and the males have nothing. So let's do something like, a men's health. Let's, help blokes helping blokes. Like, not like what you're doing, because you are changing. You've helped me so much in the time. The talks and everything. When I really needed someone to chat to and all sorts of stuff. So. But yeah, I feel like there's a lot of fake just stuff out there that, I don't know. It's just like, yeah, all right, let's do this, and just sort of, just to make them feel like, we're actually sort of acknowledging the men's health. But I don't think there's enough being done.
That's
Other
what
than
that is.
people like yourself. I don't think. I don't know how it could be changed. I don't know how that's going to be. It's just, it feels more, I don't know whether it's 75-25, whereas it should be like 50-50, it shouldn't be, yeah, I understand the way of the old days and all this sort of stuff and the way it was, and, things change and all that sort of stuff, and that's fine. But it's not only changed, but it's changed in the opposite direction completely, where back in those days, now we're the female and they're the male, almost sort of, you know, um, you know, I would come home from a hard day's work, and guilty of charge, I would sometimes fall asleep on the lounge, okay, after a hard day's work, and I'd get this yelling all of a sudden. It's like, oi, and it's just like, oh, and I'd jump up like, what? It's like, you were falling asleep, and I was just like, are you serious? It's like, I was falling asleep. I said, that's all. Like, I said, I've had a hard day's work. Like last December, in my last company, each of us done, I think, between 200 and 250 hours in that last month from December the 1st leading up till Christmas time. 13, 14, 15-hour days, and pumping out the work for our boss and just going home absolutely wrecked, and, yeah, so we used to work so much, and just doing the polished concrete and just doing the epoxy was what I did, and it was just such a physical job, and it's just I am only a small person, so I'm burning so much more than I can put in, as I said, and yeah, very physical, even at my age, just to keep doing that and doing it and pushing it around 4, 5, 600 kilo grinding machines and on your hands and knees grinding the edges and polishing and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's but
It's
yeah, to go
tough.
home and
It's
fall
tough.
asleep,
Yeah,
and have
it's a tough life. It's a tough life, and in a lot of situations, such as like yours, in my opinion, it's a lot of these marriages or a lot of these relationships is simply a one-way street. There's no, yeah, it's look, I personally believe something needs to be done. Something needs to be changed. I
yeah,
believe in that women's rights should be protected. They should never be abused. No real man will abuse emotionally, physically, mentally, or in any other way abuse a woman. That's not how a real man behaves. That is not how a real man acts. At the same time, is that men are now being abused. It's the other way around. Reason being why is that why something needs to be done. Something needs to be
yeah,
changed. The struggling voices
yeah,
need to be heard. The government maybe needs to listen to these struggling voices. And I'm so glad that you actually reached out to us some time ago now, and we always have our chats,
yeah,
trying to work together to improve your situation. But we are now striving and working towards a massive movement. Is really to get those voices out there on a global level, and the voices need to be heard by the people, the voices need to be heard by the government, and something needs to be done or changed. I mean,
yeah,
20, 30 years ago, we wouldn't be having this
yeah,
discussion. We
yeah,
wouldn't be having this
exactly.
discussion. But now we need to have this discussion. Therefore, the
Yeah,
question now arises, do we need to have a legislation being put in place that in a way that men are not abused by their partners or
yeah, but
by their woman?
it's happened so fast. It's happened so fast from us losing, from what I say, from going from the back in the 60s and the 50s and 60s, and then up and slowly about then from, just from where it slowly turned around, and then it just, that 50 years, whatever, it took a long time, but then all of a sudden the last, 10, 20 years, a lot's changed, and
Of course.
such a, as far as I think for them, and um, you know, another thing I find very hard to really swallow is, and this is a little bit of a story of a past of the exes, a little quick little rundown that I shared with you, and then you wanted me to hold off on telling you.
Oh, yes, please go
Uh,
ahead.
So yeah, obviously she met her first husband in high school. That's where I knew her from.
Mm.
I knew of him, and then obviously my parents moved around a lot. We moved. She had a slight fascination with my butt back then. Anyway, doesn't matter. She ended up hooking up with him after they had kids, got married, were together for about 10 years. Like that. Then they broke up, had a house. She took half of his super. They had a settlement each, got a decent payout each. And then from there, she sort of, had a couple of different relationships. And then, there was one relationship when I first saw her again, and she was in this relationship with a bloke. And one night, this bloke was down at my house because he was friends with my sister. and he was sort of cracking on to my sister while I was with my ex. Was my ex at the time, but anyway. So I said something, So yeah, he cheated on her with my sister, yada yada yada. So then we finally hooked up, right? Married for so long, everything like that, and so when we split up, and she turned around and said that I'm not going to get with any other bloke, that's it. I'm just dedicating, for the boys and all that. I'm not interested in any other bloke. So 5 months later, she'd hooked up with a bloke. Even to the point where a month after that, she took our son and him away to a hotel, like a B&B, away, and like after all the years of me and his mum being together, and to have that thrown in his face, I thought was so wrong. So one day when I rocked up to the house, probably a couple of months before the end of the year, I noticed that the ex-husband there, the first husband was there, me being the second. The boyfriend was there. Her auntie was there, her auntie's boyfriend, and the boys were out the front. And the ex-husband and the boyfriend were having a good old chat. And I thought, this is a lovely big family, all real happy, They're all having a big powwow. I was like, mate, speak, I want to rip all their heads off. Anyway, I had to drop my son off one time,
You
and
were angry.
I was coming out of the
You were angry.
and
You were emotionally angry at that point.
yeah, yeah. I like just to see them all, because I think her auntie had a massive part of her divorcing me. But yeah, so I left my son there one time, and he goes, so we'll talk about something. She goes, "Oh, can you make an effort to say hello to him?" All right, look, I had to bite my tongue, say hello. He goes, "Oh, surprised you don't remember me." I was like, "What?" He goes, "I'm surprised you don't remember me from high school." I was like, he goes, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I was best friends with David." So David being her first husband. So her first husband and her new boyfriend were best friends back in high school. And it's just like, you're fucking kidding me.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know. That's just, I don't know, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I
You
understand.
know,
I understand.
he worked at the drags, her ex-husband worked at the Tail and Bend where the drags are and all this sort of stuff. It's just, and yeah, all of a sudden for her to be in a relationship with him, and, I've confronted him one time at his workshop because I heard that he was slagging me and they were having a bit of on social media. So I went and confronted him, but he obviously didn't want to confront me and that. And, yeah, so, it's just too many circumstances that are just, I don't know, I'm one to believe, that sort of in that sort of stuff, yeah, I'm not stupid. So, but yeah, I
So,
can't prove nothing.
of course, of course, of course. The most important thing is this: is that look, we cannot control anything or most things from the outside externally, but we can control ourselves, our decisions that we want to live by. And I think that's that's one of the most important things. And we've been talking about that. We've been working closely together, and we will continue to have discussions and work closely together with you, Paul, to ensure that you actually rebuild yourself back to the top of the mountain, so you begin to thrive
Yeah.
in all areas. I know initially it's difficult, it's challenging, but honestly, since I think we've had our chats, and since we've been able to connect from day one, I think from my I actually do recall that you've told me that I've made a massive difference on how things could have had been different if we were not being communicating ongoing.
Yeah, because times got really tough there, and like just really to the point where just thinking, just whether it's better, or But I've always looked my every day to go to thing, and why I haven't is my son. You know,
That's probably the most
he's
difficult
my
thing for you.
love. That's I couldn't do the thing that unfortunately you hear a lot of happening with fathers. But yeah, everything brings me back to him, and I just couldn't do anything to not ever see him again. I just, yeah, he always gets me through some of those real hard thoughts.
It's heartbreaking.
And
Yeah.
you know, our talks, and I've had a couple of mates, that I've chatted to on phone and just catching up with, and just yeah. So, but yeah, yeah,
Well,
it's still hard.
it is still difficult. And we've got something for you anyway that we're gonna be working closer together, hopefully within the near future. That's something, a discussion to have for another time. But stay strong. We'll
Yeah.
continue to to work closer together with you, Paul. Before we end the podcast, do you have any last message that you want to share with the people, or with struggling dads, or with anything, or with anyone out there? Do you have a last message, last thought that you want to share?
I think we can't sit around and really, really sit around and do nothing. I think we
Mm,
have to fill our time and our days with doing something, whether it's work or just getting out for a walk, whatever that you might like to do, whatever. But I think we just need to, in these tough times, you got to look at, is there something that really holds you to the world? Do you have something like a child? I know you might not get to see them, and as difficult it is, if it is, you know, when you sit around, I feel like sitting around, you dwell, and you get some really bad thoughts, and I know it's hard, and you just feel like really giving up, and
mm.
I've I've felt it. I've felt like giving up, many times, and I've just but I know out there's a lot of other fathers that are doing it a lot worse than I am, and yeah, I really understand the pain, and I feel for a lot of blokes out there, all the blokes going through what I am and more, and yeah, it's just we all need to just do this. We all need to just keep going and just, you know, yeah, there is light eventually, as I've found. There is some light at the end of that dark tunnel, and you've just got to hold on to that light and not, get that all those nasty thoughts that comes into your head, all that negativity and all that stuff that we feel, it's natural because we've fought so hard to work for everything we've done, and just to be chopped down like, like a tree that's been standing for 100 years, and just feel like that is gone, to lose it all, you know yeah.
Thank you very much,
No,
Paul,
we just
for sharing your story. It's a lot of courage. We thank you. We're grateful for you, and thank you very very much. And look, we might even hear more from you again in the future as well. Hopefully, next time you're in a better place, better in better times as well.
thank you very much. I definitely appreciate it, and it's been a great talk.
Now, thank you very much, Paul, and yeah, and we'll see you soon. Thank you very much.